Welcome to the Encouragement Engineering Podcast. We combat the negativity that inundates our daily lives with a positive perspective and positive action to change people's lives. Today's guest is Liam Naden. Liam is a speaker, teacher, writer, and researcher who helps you understand the process for creating true success in your life by understanding how you use your brain the right way, which we can all use, overcoming your problems, achieving your goals, and ending frustration. He is a host of the podcast Using Your Brain for Success and creator of the Neuro-State Rebalancing, NSR, a process which automatically gets your brain working the right way to bring you the life you want. Liam is also an experienced marriage and relationship coach, host of the Growing in Love for Life podcast, author of more than 20 books, and a creator of 4 relationship coaching programs. So please welcome to the show, Liam Naden. Liam, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob. It's a pleasure being here. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. And okay, I just had to make sure we were recording. Sorry about that. So, yeah. So if you can, let's tell the audience about you and how you got to where you are, because I always find that interesting of how people got to where they are today and you know, what they needed to overcome or what they went through.
Sure. Well, probably like most of your listeners, I was somebody who studied success pretty well all my life and tried to figure out, you know, how can we have a great life? How can we be really happy and do the things we like to do and avoid having problems and stress? And I tried lots of different things. I started off with a religious upbringing and, you know, went down the religious path of maybe prayer was the secret. That was what I was told, you know, pray to God and you'll get what you ask for. And it didn't quite work out for me. And to be honest, it didn't really seem to be working for that many other people as well that I noticed, at least not consistently. So I really tried a whole raft of other things from, you know, spiritual practices, personal development and self-help practices. I set up my own businesses thinking that making a lot of money would, you know, be the key or would be a key to success and happiness. And I got, you know, I studied a lot of stuff in all sorts of different areas, went to lots of seminars, became an expert in different techniques. And so I thought I pretty well had a handle on what success was and how to be in control of your life. But a couple of things happened. One thing I noticed was throughout the whole process of my life, I still had lots of stress and problems.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like you get to the point of thinking, well, maybe this is natural. Maybe this is normal. Maybe life is supposed to be full of problems and stress and hassle. Right. And but it really frustrated and annoyed me, and I kept trying to figure out, well, you know, yes, I've got lots of good things happening, but I'm still not really happy, and I've still got these problems to deal with that keep showing up. And maybe my idea of, you know, a really happy and fulfilling life, maybe it's not realistic. Maybe life's supposed to be a struggle. So that was one thing that happened. But the other thing that happened was in my mid-40s, I lost everything.
Wow.
And I became homeless, and everything I had, all my money and assets and relationship and, you know, friends and family and businesses, they all disappeared virtually overnight. And I ended up having to move in and sleep on my mother's couch in her small apartment, my elderly mother, and which is a bit, you know, of a come down for a guy in his 40s.
Yeah.
But anyway, it turned out to be a bit of a watershed time because, like all crises are, I guess, because when I started to rebuild my life back, I noticed things were going in quite a different way. I attracted a much better relationship, a much easier relationship, one that I'd ever had before. I was starting to get business opportunities and you know, money-making opportunities come to me that with doing things that I really enjoyed. And I was also doing some lifestyle things that I had always wanted to do, and some things that I'd not thought of doing, but I was now having a great, enjoyable life and making the money I needed to make to do what I wanted to do. And one of the best things, or the best thing, was I didn't seem to have much in the way of problems or stress. And I thought,
I love that. Yeah.
Really, things were flowing in a much better way, and, you know, they pretty well still do. So I wanted to figure out what was the difference, because I'd really struggled. I'd tried hard. I'd motivated myself to really go for setting big goals and trying to achieve big goals. And I still had lots of problems and stress, and I still couldn't prevent myself from losing everything. What was the difference between the me then and the new me, which I was putting in effort, but it wasn't struggle. And
Right.
things sort of showed up, unexpected things, good people showed up, opportunities, situations. And so what was the difference? And I thought, well, I want to figure this out. And I started to do a lot of research that was happening at the same time. As I set up a business helping people with their marriage or their relationship.
Okay.
And I still do that. It's still a major part of what I do, is particularly helping people who are facing, the end of their marriage and they don't want it to end. So what I noticed was some of the people who did my coaching managed to get the result they wanted. They got back together, they healed their marriage, and other people didn't. And I thought, well, what's the difference? Because it didn't seem to be the information, because
Right.
my coaching is pretty well the same information for everybody. It does sort of it works for most situations. So that didn't seem to be what made the difference as to whether people had information or the right information or not. It also wasn't a question of motivation, because everybody was very motivated. You can imagine if you're in that situation, you are going to be motivated.
Yeah.
But some people were very determined, very motivated, and they still didn't succeed. And I thought, well, what else? Well, it also wasn't anything to do with prayer, because many people, they told me they prayed constantly for their marriage, and it still failed. And other people didn't pray at all, and they managed to get back together in their marriage. So putting it all together, both what I was doing differently to get the results I was getting and what other people were doing differently, I finally figured it all out, that it had to do with how they were using their brain.
Mm-hmm.
And it struck me as a bit odd. When you really think about it, we know very little about how our brain actually works.
Right.
Yet it is the most powerful machine that's ever been, that exists. There have been many books written about the power of the brain. It's just an infinitely powerful tool, a machine. Yet we're never taught how to use it. We're taught how to use every other machine that we think we need to succeed in life, whether it's driving a car. You wouldn't think of getting into a car and trying to go anywhere without learning how to drive it, how to use it. And if you did get in without learning how to use it, you'd probably do all the wrong things. And what you'd end up with is a very bumpy ride if you actually got anywhere, and you would end up damaging the car and possibly yourself. In other words, you'd have problems.
Yeah.
And same with a computer. You learn how to use a computer. If you don't know how to use it, you're not going to get very far. You're going to put in, and it doesn't matter how motivated, how determined you are. If you don't know how to use it the right way, you're going to have problems. You're going to have stress, struggle, all those things. And it turns out that the human brain is very much like any other machine. It has a very specific way that it operates, and it gives very specific results. And it's designed to do that if it's used properly. And if it's not used properly, you end up with problems in your life. And to a very large degree, and this was a bit of a shock to me when I realized it, but unfortunately, it is the truth that problems in our life, to a very large degree, are the result of simply using this machine of our brain the wrong way.
Yeah. And that's interesting, because you mentioned that on your website. And if you can, let's go into that a little further, because if we're all using our brain the wrong way, we're not doing a whole lot right.
Well, the brain is a remarkable machine, and it's doing its best to give us the best life possible. That is what it's designed for, because we're here as a biological species to survive and to thrive. And the brain is the machine that's designed to allow that to happen. It's constantly trying to make us not only survive, but to thrive, to be our best. Because when we're at our best, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, when we're at our best, we have the best chance of survival. You know, we're creative, we're resourceful, we can think of better ways to do things, and we're more motivated, and we take more action. So in a very real sense, this is what the brain is constantly trying to do, is to get us really to be the best that we can be. But because we're not using it the right way, we keep getting in the way and, you know, messing things up for ourselves, if you like.
And you mentioned stress too, because everybody says, well, you know, everything's stressful and all that, but that's not always the case. I mean, it seems like your misfortune, you learn how the ability to come back and overcome some of those things and not have that. What did you find out as part of your journey that you didn't have the stress? How was, you know, obviously that's, I think people find a hope in that, because it's, oh, I feel so stressed. And when you don't have it, you feel relieved. What did you do for that?
Well, that's really at the core of what I teach through the Neuro-State Rebalancing process, because essentially when you think about what stress is, stress is a biological response to something that is a danger in your life. And that's what it's designed to be. So, and that is absolutely perfect for its primary function, which is if you have something that's really dangerous and is a threat to your survival. So imagine if you're, you know, walking through the forest and a lion comes running out, right, you know, in ancient times, you know, that is a real danger. That's a real threat. So you're supposed to feel fear and stress when that happens. And what actually goes on is your brain interprets that event as something that is dangerous to you, and it produces a mechanism called our fight, flight, or freeze response mechanism, or our survival mechanism, to deal with that threat there and then. And that's absolutely perfect. But the problem is, most of the time these days, most people have their brain working in a way that's telling them that there's a threat to their survival when there really isn't. Gotcha. So the brain is producing this fear response, which produces an anxious, stressed state, because it's interpreting something as being a danger, because somehow you've taught your brain to think that your environment is dangerous. And of course, 99.99% of the time it's not.
Right.
You know, we're not supposed to use this brain function for anything other than an immediate, you know, full-on danger threat to us, not some imaginary threat about we might lose all our money, or we might get a disease, or we might, you know, we might have problems in our relationship, or we might, you know, look back in 20 years' time with regret at all the things we didn't do. You know, these are all fears and worries that people have, and that aren't real. And the problem with that is it messes up your brain, because right, your brain can't function properly when you're telling it, or when you're using it in a way that it's believing that it's got all these threats and dangers to deal with. It can't get on with its real job, which is to find you the right opportunities, give you the right ideas, bring the right people to you, get you to do the right things, and stop doing the wrong things, right, which is a big one, so that you can actually lead a happy and successful life. So it's a bit like a snowball, or a vicious cycle, really. Right. That the more stressed you are, the more problems you create, and then you get more stressed, and you get into this sort of loop. But, you know, it's all about, if you can figure out, and this is what I try and help people understand and deal with, if you can figure out a way to break that cycle and stop your brain from feeling afraid all the time of nothing.
Right. Of our own interpreted ideas.
That's when you can, it's all a battle. Yeah.
And it's interesting, because most of the time when you come up with stress, it's like you said, it's perceived ideas. Being late for a meeting doesn't have to be stressful. You know, it is what it is. There's going to be times where it happens, but it's not life-ending. That's a great perception you just created. Was, okay, if the lion's jumping out at you, that's stress. Being late for something, or not getting in line soon enough, or whatever you create a stress about, isn't life-threatening. So we got to put that in perspective.
Absolutely. And, you know, everything that isn't an immediate threat to you, like the lion running out at you, everything is simply your interpretation of what's going on. And your interpretation could be different. I mean, the experience I had of losing everything, some people would say, well, how would you recover from that? That's a lifetime of hard work, and it all disappeared. I bet you're really bitter and upset by it. And maybe some people are when that happens. But what I could see from a different perspective, fortunately, that it was actually a great gift.
Right.
That it enabled me to really learn so much about myself and about how I work, and go on to create a much better, happier, more fulfilling life, which I never would have done if I hadn't had that experience.
Right.
And it's very interesting that you often hear stories, very often, of people who go through traumatic events in their life, and they often say it was the best thing that ever happened, and
right.
that it was the event that had to happen to turn their life around. So when people are going through really what they perceive as a really bad time, it's really useful to think, maybe what I'm going through right now is something that's for my greatest good. And one little powerful line I often share with people, I think is really helpful to change your perspective, is, we often say, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? Instead of saying, why is this happening to me? Say to yourself, why is this happening for me?
Right.
Why is this happening for me? And that automatically changes your perspective. And your brain is working in a different way to perceive it as a different thing. And it'll come up with a better answer to say, well, maybe you're going to go on and do something with this experience that you can share with others to help them. Maybe it's going to make you a lot stronger. Maybe some of these things about these fears that you have in your makeup, maybe you'll get rid of them and you'll be able to do great things. That's all the purpose of what, it's a lesson that you're going through. It's not the end of the world.
No. And fear is a created idea in your own head. It's 99% of the time, it's not going to come true. No, that's something we create. We predict the future, which none of us can do. No, I don't know.
That's right.
I don't know anybody who's predicted the future accurately before. So that's a big one, is, that putting aside the fear. I think that's critical. What is it that you mentioned in one of your topics on your website? You talk about the itching that holds nearly everyone back, or the one thing, I'm sorry, that holds nearly everyone back. What is that one thing?
Well, you just mentioned it. It's fear. Because people don't understand the effect that fear has on their brain machinery. Because what fear does, when you produce fear, when your brain produces fear, it's there to react instantly against an immediate danger. But what else does it do to your brain? This is really interesting. What it actually does, it activates something called the sympathetic nervous system. And in that state of fear, it shuts down and shuts off all your creativity, all your intuition, your imagination, your awareness, your full awareness. Instead of you being able to see the big picture and see all of the possibilities and all of the things that you might be able to do in your situation, it gets you to only focus on the negative.
Wow.
and to make things worse than they actually are. And you can think about it, that's perfect for when the lion's coming at you in the forest.
Right.
You don't want to be saying, oh, look at the beautiful trees and smell the flowers. You've got
run.
to, and your brain is going, are there any other dangers? What other, are there, how many, is there another dangerous animal around? All it's doing is focus totally on the negative. And you can see that with people who are in a stressful state, is they, from the outside, they do see things as worse than they actually are.
Right.
And they imagine, they watch something on the news, which is, of course, going to make them feel bad, and they imagine that something bad's going to happen to them.
Right.
And but this isn't just an idea. This is the brain functioning, blocking out everything other than negative thought and problems. Right. So you're going to think you have a lot more problems than you actually do, because your brain is looking for problems in that state. It's looking for all the problems to solve to get you back into a natural, safe environment.
Right.
It wants to get rid of all of those problems, but it can get rid of the lion by making you run or whatever, but it can't get rid of this imaginary idea you've got that you're going to lose all your money in 10 years' time, or you're going to be unhappy in your 80s if you don't heal this marriage that to this person you're married to. And that's why we just mess ourselves up. Because the other thing that happens is, you can really think about it, that when you're in that state, if you don't have access to your imagination, creativity, big picture thinking, the full resources of your creative brain, then you can't fix the problem that you've got.
Right.
You can't see the solution.
Yeah.
What you can
like
do is
Einstein.
come up with some random idea, like, oh, maybe I should, if it's a relationship, we should go to counseling, or we should fix our problems, or we should work on it, or I should go on YouTube and, see what someone says, and I'll try and remember to do all the right things. None of those things actually work. And this is what I teach in my coaching, is what to do that does work, but in my relationship programs. But, all you end up doing with a problem, when you focus on it and when you try and work it all out and you try and drive through it, is you end up making things worse. Because your brain is not able to use its full resources. All it can do is just react. Very often people in a relationship, when they have problems, they argue, and they know they shouldn't argue, but their brain is making them argue, because it's like a quick fix, make you feel slightly better, make you feel a little bit in control of the situation. So you argue, but it doesn't solve the problem.
Right. So what do you recommend for people to stop doing that? How do they shift their actions? Is it taking time to step back and respond instead of react to a situation? What helps them to change that behavior?
Well, the behavior is the symptom. The cause is how your brain is functioning.
Okay.
Because the thing is, if you can figure out how to use the machine of your brain the right way, it will automatically solve your problems for you. Your brain, there's nothing in nature that says problems are good,
Right.
and experience which says problems are good. Yes, you can have learning experiences through having problems, but I think if we were to ask anybody, and myself, I'd much rather learn the easy way.
Right.
I'd much rather not make the mistakes, because I could see that it was a mistake if I was to do it, rather than make it and learn afterwards that it was a mistake and have to clear it up. So when you learn how to use your brain the right way, which means learn how to identify fear, or only activate fear when it truly is a life-threatening, harmful situation. And when you can change your brain not to get into that state for everything else, that's the key, because your brain will solve your problems for you. You don't need to figure it out, because the other thing people don't realize about their brain is this part of the brain that figures out all your problems, or brings you your ideal life, gets you doing what you love to do. It's not your thinking brain. There's 4 parts of your brain, and your thinking part of your brain is not the part that actually creates your ideal life.
Right.
And we know this is true because most of the things that shape our lives are not things we've thought about in advance. When we meet somebody who we end up marrying, or when we find a business opportunity or a new career, that we don't sit down the night before and go, well, tomorrow I'm going to meet my wife, my future wife, and this is what she's going to look like. These things happen beyond our thought, and it's a different part of the brain that creates all of these situations for us. But we're all trying to figure it out with our thinking brain, and our thinking brain doesn't have those answers. It doesn't know. It's much more limited. It has a different function. So you don't need to worry about it, think about it, try and figure it out, when you realize that the part of your brain that will do all of that is independent of your thought. And yes, you're going to have to put in some effort, but that's where the difference between effort and struggle comes. Struggle comes from trying to figure it out. Effort comes from your brain bringing you the right opportunities and things that you should do at the right time, and you do it.
I like that, because your mind already knows to hand it off to certain things, to different parts of the brain, where you, in your limited knowledge, you don't know that, and so you try to do everything. That doesn't work all the time. Oh,
that's right. Well, it never works. I found it never worked.
Yeah. I try to do too much.
Sometimes it's a bit hit and miss, and you get the odd success, and you think, oh, I worked it up. But even successes, when you really think about it, they come to you and you act on them.
Right.
Part of the problem with the whole area of goal setting, most people set goals based on fear, and they say, well, when I really want this because then I'll be happy. It's a very ineffective way to to set a goal and you'll never achieve those goals. And if you do, you still won't be happy. But a goal that comes from a knowing place rather than a wanting or a thinking place, which is a different sort of a goal, they're the goals you do achieve. And, I think this is where people get so frustrated trying to make their life work without realizing you've got something that knows how to make your life work, but you do have to step back a little bit and allow it to do its job. And this is why in the Bible, the Bible actually is one of the greatest success manuals ever written, because it says in the Bible, be not afraid.
Yeah.
It says it more than 300 times.
Yeah.
And it's not saying be not afraid because it's a fancy idea. It's because if you're afraid, your brain isn't going to work right and you're not going to be running your life right.
And that's so critical. I mean, you think about that. It's like, I've said this before in other podcasts, the Bible is a plan that simplifies our life, but we want to complicate our life. So that's why we take every derivative we can and every possibility and change what meaning might be. It's like there's 10 commandments for a reason. There's only 10. It's not complicated. We complicate it.
So we complicate it because we're afraid, and we try to work it all out, or we doubt, or it's not so much we doubt, we don't understand. We don't understand how our brain is designed to work. It's a bit like if you knew, it's like getting into a car and not trusting that if you put your foot on the accelerator and take your hand off the hand, let the handbrake off, that it's going to go.
Right.
But if you understand that that's how the machine works, you don't get stressed and you don't try and figure it all out and do anything fancy. You just allow that, you allow the car to take you to where you're going.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point, is let your brain do the work. Now, what are some ways you can help people to do that so they don't have these problems, and in their life and not carrying all this extra weight? I mean, let the brain do its thing, but what else?
Well, that's all you need to do. Let the brain do its thing and focus on, it really is as simple as that. Again, in a fear, what we've become as humans, when we live in an anxious state, most of the time, we become trained, or we develop this habit of thinking, what's something I can do? What's a technique? What do I do? And people often, I find this in my coaching, people want to know what to do. Okay, well, that's all fine, Liam, all this sort of brain stuff and blah, blah, but what do I do? What my wife shouts at me, what do I do? But this what do I do urge to have an answer comes from using your brain again the wrong way, from an anxious state and in an anxious state, your brain wants to know, what do I do right now?
Right.
Fix the problem right now. Bang, bang.
Right.
It's not interested in consequences and planning. It can't see any of that, because again, the lion's running at you. There's no thinking that is involved in that. What do I do right now? Run it, get out of the way.
Right.
It doesn't think consequences. So it's very important to realize that you will know what to do when you need to know it, and not only that, you will do it if you're using your brain the right way. And I've just noticed for myself and other people I've coached as well, so many astounding coincidences or strange random events that have shown up that have been absolutely perfect, that I could never have predicted or figured out. And you get to the point of thinking, which is what I did get to the point of thinking, well, there's something going on here. There's something else beyond me trying to figure it out.
Right.
And again, it doesn't mean you don't put in any effort, but if you want to know what to do, if you still have this, all right, yeah, Liam, but what do I do? Here's what you do. First of all, you work on removing your fear. I teach this in my Neuro-State Rebalancing coaching program, how to get rid of your fear, how to stop your brain from misinterpreting fear. But there's several practical things you can do. One is you've got to start controlling your mental nutrition.
Right.
Because we all know if you put junk food in your body, you're going to end up with problems.
Yeah.
But this is also true of the brain and our thoughts. So you've got to be really, really vigilant and ruthless with yourself to say anything that makes me feel negative, bad, worried, afraid, or stressed, I've got to do my utmost to avoid it.
Right.
So that means turning off the negative news.
Yeah,
That mean,
definitely.
and just saying that means not talking to people who make you feel bad,
Yeah.
or who want to talk about something that's going to make you feel bad. And people say, oh, well, you have to be realistic. Yeah, you do have to be realistic by understanding that your brain, if you're going to put some toxicity into it, it's going to produce toxicity in your life. So that's a really practical thing that people often they struggle with, but once they really get it, then they become the guardian, not only of what they put in their body, but also of what they put in their brain, because they realize that if they activate fear, you're finished.
Right.
You really are. And that's the problem with so much of what people focus on these days. If you focus on something negative, you're finished, because your brain literally is shut down from doing its job of bringing you everything you need in your life to be happy.
And
it's
that's
a purely
so true.
mechanical process. It's nothing, there's nothing esoteric about this. This is, or, about the mind and beliefs. And
right.
I went down all that stuff, and there's some good things, but I'm talking about a mechanical biological process that you can rely on.
Yeah. And that's important. That it's proven, obviously. And, what we've got to make sure our mind is, like you said, if you want to have a decent body, you've got to put good things in it, garbage in, garbage out. You don't want that stuff in your mind. It just takes up too much space, too much load. You don't need that. Enjoy the times you have. It's so interesting too, because when you start to do that, I think your positivity starts to shift to more, like you said, you see more opportunities, more people come into your life that are offering the things you need or you wanted to see in your life. Did you find that? You said you found that happening after your, you changed your mindset, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at the point now where I really don't have any plans or set any goals, because and it's interesting. I in my own podcast about the brain that I have called "Using Your Brain for Success," I interviewed a gentleman who, in the 90s, I think, he had a very large business. He had more than 1 million customers. He had 500 employees. He had 2 private jets that he flew around the world in. And he said, Liam, I could never have put any of that stuff on a goals list.
Right.
So it would have a goals list, and there's a lot more research coming out about this. A goals list is limiting.
Yeah.
It limits you to what you think might make you happy, but maybe what might make you happy is something you've never thought of, and it probably is. So why would you limit yourself with a goals list? So the key is, all you really need to do, again, if you want to, or if your listeners want, right, what do I do? All you need to do is just do the next, and this gentleman, his philosophy of life was take the next step.
Yeah.
No more, no less, and the next will be revealed after that.
Yeah,
and if you think about it, again, in the Bible,
take the first step.
that's all you need to focus on. You don't need to know what the 20 steps are. You can't know what they are. You'll only know the next step after you take the next one, as it were.
Yeah.
And again, it says that in the Bible. Jesus said, give no thought for tomorrow will take care of itself.
Exactly.
Be not anxious, be not worried. Don't think, he didn't say sit down and write down your goals and work on them. He said, don't think about tomorrow. And by tomorrow, he didn't mean just, when the sun rises. He meant the next moment is tomorrow, isn't it? Give no thought to it. Give your thought to where you are right now. Don't miss out on what is now. And that takes, in the words of the film, The Matrix.
Yeah.
I can show you the door, but you're the one who has to walk through it.
Yeah, definitely.
You've got to take that leap. And a lot of that comes from understanding that's how the machine of your brain works.
Well, Liam, this has been great information for people to realize they have the tool, if you will. Where can people find out more about you, your website, what you offer? Because I want to make sure they get that information.
Oh, thanks, Bob. Yeah, well, all my stuff is on my website, which is just my name, liamnaden.com. My podcast episodes and all my various bits and pieces. So if people are interested in this stuff, and I certainly hope they are, because it's the key to everything, then they'll find it all there.
And definitely check out his website. I was looking at it earlier today, and he's got his podcast episodes on there, which are good. He's got all his, all kinds of information out there explaining this. So check out his website, and your social media handles are out there as well. So we appreciate that. Liam, I want to thank you for taking the time today to be a guest on the Encouragement Engineering podcast. I really appreciate the insight, and it's just a reminder that, hey, you know what? We're not too far off here. We just got to learn to let it be and let our brain work. So thank you for doing what you're doing and sharing your information with us.
Oh, thank you, Bob. It's been a real pleasure being here.
Well, thank you. And I hope you have a great day.
And you too.
Thanks.